but the point is that the focus of this work, the main point, as it were, is elided. I mean, that you don't see, you just see these legs, basically. So, you know, this is like exhibitionism by proxy, even once or twice removed, you know. So unlike what the nuns taught him as a youth in Catholic parochial school, as a Cuban American in Florida, he told me that he could undo the pain of restriction with this art. And he found a way he could achieve free expression by maybe literally and figuratively calling the shots. Martinez becomes a kind of a choreographer of men's ejaculations. In self-portraits, that's the title of this work, it's actually Self-Portraits of Heterosexual Men, 2007. That's the full title. We see legs, but no genitals are shown. I just said that. Now, it's interesting, but when you think about how our brain works, you know, we have this blind spot, and then the brain fills things in. We extrapolate based on what we do see. And so, in a way, here we kind of use the legs and feet to construct the greater reality of the whole person, or at least here, the whole situation. In other works by other artists, we might be given only a taste of something by which we and our brains misguidedly take to be the whole picture. Maybe, just maybe, this is at the core of why people suffer. You know, perhaps this is why some patients, for example, have given up on one long-term relationship to pursue yet another, only to find themselves later feeling doubly lonely. They were chasing not something genuine, maybe, and not something total, but instead an extrapolation, which in the end maybe really did not reflect the greater reality. So in Self-Portraits, Martinez is the exhibitionist by proxy, and the idea here is that he's forcing the public into a position of possible unease with male sexuality. Male sexuality, which includes male autoeroticism. Now, in my telephone interview with Gabriel Martinez a couple years ago, he told me this. I'll quote him and then sort of annotate some of the things he said. For the viewer, what I appreciate about the work, incidentally, you know, contemporary art is different also in that artists are sort of, you have to come up with it almost seems like they have to come up with a way to sort of justify the work. I mean, I think the market maybe has sort of forces that. This is a whole other discussion, but it's interesting how Picasso once said, you know, you shouldn't be talking about a work of art. You know, you just look at it and enjoy it. But anyway, so he really goes into detail about what this is supposed to do. So for the viewer, what I appreciate about the work is that it implicates the viewer as a voyeur, in a sense, setting up the viewer to witness a very private and personal act. The subject of the photograph is, you know, metaphorically masturbating for me. That's what he says. So, you know, he says that this exhibitionism of others is a manipulation. And he's trying to turn the divisions of sexuality and maleness and this Catholic sin of masturbation on its head. When I asked him what he hopes the viewer will internalize from the work, he said that energy itself, this dropping of the seed, becomes the photograph in a sense. The 100 men together, the energy that this creates could be intense to a viewer. It's not pre, it's not post, it's the moment of orgasm that's a vibe that you're surrounded by, or that you could push away. You could be repulsed by it. Which, so, I mean, the viewers could either let go of this or let themselves absorb it. It's very much a personal experience and a subjective response to the personal, other's personal experience. So whether it's discussed, if it's perceived as exhilarating or frustrating, no matter what, they still want to see more. And he describes, I won't go into great detail, but I mean, he describes how culture is very important here in his youth, shame and guilt, and he feels that, you know, it's prevalent in his project here. You know, this idea of wasting, you know, semen, you know, that kind of thing. It's a waste, you know, at least he was taught that it's sort of a waste and you shouldn't be doing this sort of thing. And so, but here, instead, he turns it on its head. It's a force, like we talked about that list of exhibitionistic kind of thing. This, too, is a force that created the photographs themselves. And so you have this artifact of collective ecstasy in images. So you're forced to look at it, much as I'm forcing you to look at all this today. You know, the way the camera is set up, it's sort of set up low to the ground. The viewer is placed in a position of servitude on their knees, paying homage, perhaps ironically, to the person in this unusual position of power. He also described how he found the people. He basically said, look, I put ads on Craigslist, Adult Friend Finder, all these different websites that he found interesting. And he solicited a good third of all the participants from these sites. And these were lists of men with designations on these sites such as bisexual, bicurious, straight, gay. But what he did was he specifically found the list of the straight men. And he felt that would be, you know, much more powerful for them, for straight men to sexually perform for a gay man. And then, you know, by extension, potentially thousands of viewers that would see these images in galleries. And so, anyway, just a few other points to make. He said that it's interesting how the lowest extremity, the legs, are often really not in our minds at the moment of climax. Some images read as exhilaration, and some read as torture. And he says it's interesting because when he collected the camera and the equipment, it was just a camera basically, and one of these. You know, there was this sense of guilt on the part of the participant, saying, you know, basically saying, look, I had this orgasm, and someone else knows about it. Oh my God, you know, this kind of thing. So he found it very interesting. So he says that, you know, there's a real element of nastiness in his work. I mean, the socks are too tight around the ankles. He says that, you know, the great thing is, you know, that's a real person performing for you, the viewer. And so he feels that there's, in his words, an intriguing transference going on. So he's really doing something with power and something empowering, and maybe there's a kind of mastery over something that otherwise he had felt very restricted about. But he also enjoyed sort of being the master of ceremonies here, in the sense that some people who would not ordinarily do this sort of thing, I mean, most of his participants were not, they sort of would say, hey, you know, Gabriel, I really this was sort of kinky, and I couldn't believe it. And meanwhile, the Klieg lights went up, and I felt, hey, I'm a porn star, you know, this kind of thing. And they really started to feel like there was something playful here. But Gabriel also said that, you know what, you also had the sense of there's also being something sinister, something wrong, inappropriate, dangerous, something maybe I shouldn't get myself into. And he likens this to CSI. Investigation into little crime scenes, because you know, you have all this collateral information, you know, the settings. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where that is, but I mean, this is, you know, there's like an artist studio, and he's letting the viewer into his own individual fetishes and desires, and you can't avert your eyes. Now, so just sort of summing up. We could think about those four things. What might be going on here? I mean, I think there is something similar, at least, to Marina Abramovic in the sense that I mean, from my discussion with him, it sounded like there was this trauma of. I mean, he knew he was gay very early, and that he was not very happy as a parochial student. Now, you know, we can ask the question: is in indulgence in this, I guess, I mean, you want to say this is an unhealthy enactment? You know, I don't know about that. Unhealthy is when it causes harm to self or others, or is done to the exclusion of all other activities which would be in a person's best interest. In other words, if you're singularly obsessed with something that eats up all your time and disallows for other possibilities, well, then, you know, you sort of make a case for it. But, you know, this is really different. I mean, you have an artist creating something. And I mean, I think the whole thing sounds very healing as I talk to this artist. Now, his